for inviting us over
Thank you.
to your excellent rally. We've had an absolute blast today. It's been really good fun. I'm going to be telling you some stories. As far as I know, most of it is true. There may be a small amount of fake news in there, but I don't know where it is. So anyway, here we go. This is a brief history around ICE. It's not the history of ICE. It's not all about our trikes. It's about everything else. All this kind of stuff, even if you know everything about ICE, you won't know most of this stuff, and you won't be able to work out which bits I've made up and which bits are true. So, okay, so without further ado, how Inspired Cycle Engineering got here today. The story starts, I've chosen to start in 1946, when a gentleman by the name of Peter Travers Ross entered the de Havilland Aeronautical Technical School. He demobbed from the Second World War. He was now looking for something to do. He decided to go and become an aeronautical engineer, because why not? Peter worked for de Havilland when they developed the world's first jet airliner, the de Havilland Comet. It had a few issues, but it was the first, and British. Peter liked fast things and got to know Colin Chapman. Now, anybody who knows anything about racing cars will have heard of Colin Chapman of Lotus. Peter met Colin when Colin was building the Lotus 11, and Peter, being an engineer, helped Colin with the Lotus 11 and got to build his own from spare parts that were left lying around the workshop. He also then took his car down to Le Mans, where Lotus were racing in the famous 24-hour race. Peter took his car down as basically rolling spares. How do you get in a 24-hour race? You never know exactly what's going to break, so you need to take one of everything. So if you take a working car, you've definitely got one of everything. So Peter was there supporting the works team. He enjoyed himself so much, he stayed in Europe for the next few years racing his Lotus 11 and living off the proceeds of what he won, until one day he woke up upside down, hanging from his seatbelt in his Lotus 11 with his head in a ditch, realizing that if the ditch hadn't been there, then nor would his head be on his shoulders anymore. So at that point, he decided to give up motor racing and take up something a lot safer. So he bought himself a motor glider and spent the next few years flying his motor glider all over Europe and all over Britain, set many British and European records in his motor glider, having a thoroughly fun time. At this point, I reached the ripe old age of 11 years old and take up cycle racing. I was never very fast. I did make it to 11th in an English National Schoolboy Championships, but that wasn't fast enough to make a living at it. So anyway, I'm now here, but I've been given a copy of Richard Ballantyne's book, Richard's Bicycle Book, and in it I was introduced to recumbent, specifically fully fared trikes, and that whetted my appetite. It took a long time for anything to happen, but seeds had been sown. And the really, really cool thing is, sadly Richard died a few years ago, but before he did, whenever we would meet, he would say, "Hi Chris," and the 11-year-old me would think that was pretty cool. So my business partner Neil had also got into bikes. He was into mountain bikes in the very early 80s, when there weren't very many around. And Neil was also training to be an engineer. He was making the pressurization equipment for the Tornado jet and for other jet airliners. So a bit of a link there with Peter's stuff. The company that Neil was working for had made all the pressurization equipment for the original de Havilland Comet, and they made turbochargers. We may have heard of Garrett turbochargers. Anyway, Neil couldn't get the perfect mountain bike, so he made his own. He brazed the frame together in his kitchen. That's his wife Hero there with him. So Hero let him braze a frame together in the kitchen. Now that is a wife. And they're still together to this day. Going back to Peter now, it will become clear who Peter is in time. Peter had set so many British and European records in his motor glider, he wanted a new challenge. And he'd heard about the Battery Vehicle Society, who were making and racing electric cars. Now, this is in the late 1970s. And Peter thought, oh, that sounds like fun. So he'd gone along, he'd built himself a little electric car and was having a bit of racing. And then they said, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a human-assisted electric car category. And Peter thought, human assist, why not? So he built himself a very lightweight little car, which was pedal assisted. And turned up to the first race, on the start line, hit the go button, and all the electrics in his car fused. So he'd got no power whatsoever. But he was human assisted, so he started human assisting this now completely dead electric car. And as the race went on, many other people in the race had problems, and in the end, Peter won. And he thought to himself, there's something in this pedaling business that seems to work quite reliably. So at about the same time, this is now the very, very early 80s, 1980, 1981, there was the HPV movement was getting going in the UK, and Peter heard that things were going on, so he decided to build himself an entirely human-powered vehicle. And this is a picture of the very first trike that he built. As you can see, Peter is not a cyclist, he is a motor car racer, which is why he has a motor racing helmet on, and the headrest out of one of his cars, no doubt. So, yeah, didn't have a lot of clue about cycling, but knew about how to make things go fast, and had already proved himself as a human-powered vehicle manufacturer. Then he thought, well, aerodynamics, I am an aeronautical engineer, I should make this thing more aerodynamic and make it go faster. So he did, he fully faired his trike and took it over to Canada and entered the World Championships over there and had a thoroughly good time. And if, as any of you know, you turn up in a velomobile and stop in front of a gang of kids, you are going to draw a crowd, and Peter did that everywhere he went. Peter was working for British Airways at this point, and was commuting to and from in his machine that he called a Trice. So many people liked what he was building that in 1986 he decided to give up his day job and start manufacturing recumbent tricycles. Everybody thought he was completely mad. How would you ever make a living out of doing this? But Peter was utterly convinced. So this is a picture of the first production machine he made, 3 20-inch wheels all round. The basic configuration that we see today. There wasn't a lot to copy back in those days, and it still amazes me that we haven't really changed things very much since his original. Since his first production machine. There were other people making machines, but getting hold of information. This is pre-internet. You know, there were magazines, and there were no recumbent rallies. There was none of this. So Peter was out there, kind of blazing the trail, really. Hang on a bit. Sorry, wrong way. Peter was working also in his spare time for this guy, Prince Charles, on a project called the Prince's Youth Business Trust. Prince Charles was very keen to get young people into business and get people moving, so Peter was working as a mentor for the young people, and so used his connections to get a rather funky photograph. This is a piece of my work from round about 1987, 1988. I had been trained as a furniture maker and was making fine pieces to commission, running my own little business, generally having a bit of fun. But I did, in between times I was getting a bit bored, I'd restored an old Saab 96 V4, the Ford engine, for those who need to know. And I built coracles for fun and raced them. A coracle is a wooden basket, if you like, covered in calico, cotton cloth, and then covered in tar, and we paddle it with a single paddle. Unfortunately, I haven't got any pictures of me racing it. That would have been fun, but I missed those. I was for a short 2 years running, I was the local champion 2 years running, and yeah, we had a lot of it. Most of it was larking around, really, to be honest. But the coracle is a very ancient British boat that kind of carried on. A lot of our rivers are very small and very narrow, and they're very good for fishing. Basically, you have a coracle either side of the river, you drift down the river with a net between, and you dredge the river. There isn't anything that escapes. What killed coracle usage was angling, because anglers didn't like the fact that we could drift down the river and catch every single fish that was in it, whereas they were there with their rod and line. So as angling became a sport, they made coracles illegal, and so there we are. That was the end of coracles. But we have a lot of fun kind of keeping them alive. 1990, things are moving on. We've got big back wheels now because customers decided they needed big back wheels. They're beginning to get around the world a little bit, and here we now have a mesh seat. In 1993, Peter introduced his first mesh seat to help with breathability, and Neil built his first recumbent bicycle, because who would ride a trike? That would be a ridiculous thing to do. So bicycles were a little bit easier to make, and Neil had now moved to a vacuum pump manufacturer, so gone from blowing air to sucking air. The very, very, very high precision engineering. The measuring Neil was doing was in microns, thousandth of a millimeter. So when it comes to high precision engineering, you don't get any better than the work Neil was doing. Incredible high precision stuff. I had got bored of making furniture. I'd gone to university to study design, and I was theoretically studying furniture design, but there were an awful lot of girls studying ceramic design. And there was only one bloke on that course, and he was gay. And I quite fancied having a girlfriend, so I decided that it would be a really good idea to leave the furniture course and transfer to ceramics. So 3 years later, I graduated with a degree in ceramics, and I had a really, really good time at university. Thoroughly enjoyed myself. I'd moved away from road biking into mountain biking, as many people did. This is me up on High Street in the Lake District in the north of England. High Street was built by the Romans and hasn't been resurfaced since. It was basically 2,000 years old, and there's a few potholes. But yeah, that was a 2-day mountain bike race. That was a lot of fun. We'd race for 8 hours the first day, 5 hours the second, carrying all our camping equipment. Awesome fun. Loved cycling like that. I then met a young lady who moved down to Cornwall in the bottom southwest of England, the little bit down the bottom that sticks out into the Atlantic Ocean. She moved down there, and I couldn't live without her, so I moved down to marry her. Got a job in a second-hand bike shop, which went bust 2 weeks later. Not my fault, I'd like to say. I was given 2 old bikes, which weren't worth anything at all, which is why the shop had gone bust, because none of the stock was worth anything. So I took them home, I cut them up, and I decided to weld them back together and turn them into 2 recumbents, one for me and one for my soon-to-be wife. So I did, and the first thing I did was stick a fairing on it, see how fast I could make it go. Had a bit of fun. Then I rode over to see Peter, who had moved his recumbent manufacturing business to a little town about 10 miles away from where I was living. And he said the day I turned up, he had lost his wheel builder. His wheel builder had said, "I'm not going to build any more wheels for you." And Peter was at a bit of a loss as to what to do. So when I turned up on his doorstep, he said, "Are you a wheel builder by any chance?" And I said, "I am." Because at that point in my life, I had built 4 wheels. So that makes me a wheel builder, right? And anyway, I needed a job. So I became Peter's wheel builder, and then gradually I made more and more. This fairing that I'm sitting inside is some work I did for Peter. I also then started manufacturing some of the frames. I worked with him on the 1996, the 10th anniversary Trice. We did some work on the design, on the steering and what have you, getting that sorted out. I built a tandem for our wedding, so we could go off on our honeymoon. That's my wife on the front. We did go for a ride with me on the front, but that was only once. And after that, my wife was on the front, and that's kind of how we roll. There was, the machine also folded up and fit on the back of our car and that kind of thing. There was one quite little, I'll be very quick, little funny story on the tandem. On our honeymoon, we're going down a fairly big hill, going quite quick, and I'm beginning to get just a slight bit worried. So I leaned forward and said, very gently, "You can put the brakes on now." And I heard, "I have got the brakes on!" We were doing 47 miles an hour, and the hill wasn't looking like we were anywhere near the bottom. So I just kind of sat back and did the impression of a guy trying to relax. Yeah, the moral in the story there, if you're going to build a tandem, buy some decent brakes. Don't just take them off your mountain bike and hope for the best. Yeah. So 1999 came around. Peter wanted to retire. I wanted to make some money. I'd managed to stay alive, but I wasn't making any money. And Neil walked into my workshop. He'd left his job, decided that the rat race was no longer for him. He'd put his family into the car, and moved down to Cornwall and was looking for something to do. He happened into Peter's workshop because he knew about Peter from making his own recumbents. And Peter said, "Well, you don't want to talk to me, go and talk to Chris. He's the guy trying to buy me out." So Neil came in and said, "I'm interested in taking on this business." I said, "Great, me too." I said, "Have you got any money?" Because I've been to every single bank manager in the town and they all laugh at me when I tell them what I want to do. And he said, "Yeah, I've got some money. You know what you're doing?" I said, "I think I know what I'm doing." He says, "Right, let's go for it." So we did. And so that was us, 1999, off we jolly well went. This is Hero, his wife, my friend Yarp, who I'll tell you about more later. We were going to make all of Peter's products. Peter was manufacturing a bicycle at that time, as well as the tricycles. So these are two of our the first batch of 9 trikes that we built. Peter was, in 1998, he built 40 trikes, to give you an idea of volume, which is why the bank managers had laughed in my face when I went to see them. But more of bank managers later. My son Tim was born. This is my little son Tim there, and my friend Yarp. Yarp was a guy I met through our church. He'd come over from Holland to do some work experience in the local dockyard, and he taught me how to do CAD on computer-aided design on computers, obviously, and moved away. So I moved away from doing designs on paper and what have you, and and Tim got his first lessons in how to be clever. The first design that Tim worked on with us was the tandem that we built quite a lot of, and yes, he thought it was pretty good. We'd done quite a good job there. We then started to make more racing machines, so we dropped the seat right down and laid it right back and made the micro. And of course, we did need to build some suspension, we realised. So that was one of the first tests of the suspension. English roads aren't as new as they might be. So we do get plenty of chance to test our suspension. 2001 comes round. Yarp agrees to race for us in the World Championships. Being Dutch, he's fast, right? That's just what they do. They don't know anything else. So Neil and I turned up late, and by the time we got there, Yarp was already racing. Now, Yarp, a bit like Peter, didn't know a lot about cycle racing, but he knew how to make a bike go fast. So you will notice there that Yarp is in the World Recumbent Championships with his mudguards still on his trike. His pannier rack was still on the back. And yes, he is wearing jeans. But that's the criterium race, and he won. That night, we said, Yarp, we got to do something about this, mate. So the rest of the team and myself transformed his trike into something a little more fared and made the job a little easier. And by the end of the weekend, we had our first world champion, which was quite exciting. This is Richard Ballantine in the back there, the guy who wrote the book that inspired me when I was 11. Hitchens frames, those of you who are connoisseurs of old British frame making, I saw one of these when I was 12 years old in the flesh, and I was blown away. And I thought, if I ever made a bike, that's how I'd want to make it. And as I was now manufacturing trike frames, brazing them all together ourselves in our own workshop, we decided we would have a fancy lug too. So I designed the fancy lug, and we started and we charged quite a lot of money for these, and we were blown away how many people wanted them. But then when I look back on them now, I kind of think, well, yeah, they do look pretty nice. And the rest of our work was all fillet brazed and was pretty cool. Pretty cool. We enjoyed ourselves, Neil and I, making those. We made other trikes as well. This is my wife, Karen, sitting on one of our smaller trikes, and my daughter, Esther, who also enjoys a trike. Because we were making all the stuff ourselves, I decided to see how light I could make a trike. That seemed like a good idea at the time. So I built this machine. You'll see there on the scales, it says 22.8. That's 22.8 pounds. And this is the trike that we built. Fully steel frame, equipped with mudguards, racks, triple chain set, adjustable seat angle, adjustable boom for leg length. Everything that a trice, as we were manufacturing them then, was on this machine. And it did weigh, including racks, mudguards, the lot, 22.8 pounds with a steel frame. So, carbon trikes, boys, keep going. You ain't got there yet. That's a challenge. You can do this. Come on. I'm not going to be trying again, by the way. That nearly killed me building that thing. Okay, so 2003, we got our first British champion. We'd employed Ben. This is Ben in the lead there on his trike. We'd employed Ben. He's a guy I'd met at university, a very, very talented guy, and he'd come and work for us, and he's a keen cyclist and did many, many races all around England and ended up the British multi-track champion. The kids were getting bigger. I needed ways of moving them around, so my wife and Esther are testing a little prototype there that I'd put together. We met Brian and Larry before Larry's beard really went for it. So this is, when would this have been, Larry? 94-ish? Sorry, 2004-ish? I'm guessing something like that. Does your beard have annular rings in it like a tree, or is that how it goes? And we built the back-to-back tandem. Now that was a piece of kit. That was so much fun. You could really freak car drivers out as they're coming up towards you, and you're staring them full in the face and saying, "Go ahead, punk, make my day. Try and overtake us." Yeah. So we ended up making two of those because they were brilliant fun. Those things really put a smile on your face. Now my son Tim has made it to the age of 8. He's now riding a KMX, and he comes home from school one day and he says, "Dad, they've said I've got to make something over the Easter holiday. It's a school project, and I've decided what I want to make." I said, "Oh, okay, son, well, I'll help. I like making things. What do you want to make?" "I want to make a velomobile." "Oh, you want to make a velomobile during your Easter holiday?" "Yes, and you're 8. "Yes." "Have you spoken to Mum about this?" "No, I didn't think it was a good idea to speak to Mum. I thought I'd speak to you first." I said, "You're aware what happens to trikes when you fully fare them, how fast they go, aren't you?" He said, "Yes, I've read about them." He's a bit of a reader, my boy. And I said, "Okay, well, I'll have a word with Mum and see what I can do." So we had a word with Mum, and we were given the kitchen table. Oh, yeah. Neil is not the only one with a wife. Oh, yeah. She's the one, my missus. She's awesome. So here we go. We've been given the kitchen table, and we start cutting bits of Corex out, because how else are you going to make a fairing? We've only got 2 weeks. Now, we had a bit of a challenge when it came to getting the faired trike out, because it turned out that the trike we'd built was bigger than the back door, which leads out of our kitchen. Fortunately, the internal doors, it turns out, are bigger than the back door of the house, and on the front of the house we have this double door arrangement, so we were able to get it out. But it was a bit scary. I didn't discover this until after I'd taken the back door off its hinges and taken the frame out of the hole, and it still wouldn't go out. So then we discovered that we could get out the front, so I felt like a bit of a chump. So if you are given the kitchen table to build your fully faired trike, try and build it smaller than the door, is my recommendation. So being a responsible dad, I say, right then, let's ride it to school. I wasn't faired, and he was. And he's 8. At that point, I didn't feel like such a responsible dad, as I'm belting down the road trying to keep up with him, listening to the giggles coming from inside the fairing. 2009, we've reached the limit of what we can produce in the UK, and we've just taken the plunge and we're moving production out to Taiwan. So I went and spent most of 2009 living in Taiwan, which is a very interesting thing to do if you like being very hot in very sweaty places. But I worked with some fantastic craftsmen out there. It was really nice to work, and an honour really, to work with such amazing craftsmen in their factories, on their shop floors, working with them, teaching them everything I knew about building trikes. That was really good fun. And the quality of their work is just fantastic. I mean, I've built thousands of wheels. I used to build all the wheels I'd spend all day building trikes in the workshop, and then I'd go home and build the wheels in the evening. So I'm reasonably good, but you meet a guy who's done nothing else for his entire life, and you kind of go, now that is a craftsman. So yeah, amazing working with these guys, and they have got some tools. You want tools for testing stuff. Wow, they've got some awesome toys out there. Now, my mountain bike one of many mountain bikes I'd bought, but my favourite and the one I have still got, I've sold just about all my bikes to fund my recumbent tricycle manufacturing career. But the one I would not sell was my off-road Proflex. I bought this in 1991. And while chatting to one of the engineers in Pacific Cycles, where we're getting most of our stuff made, he was telling me how they had pioneered full suspension mountain bikes. And I said, well, that's interesting because I own one of the first full suspension mountain bikes that was ever made. I said, it's a Proflex. He said, well, that's what we made in this factory. So your bike that you bought in 1991 was made in this factory. In fact, he said, I welded them together. So am I in the right place? Yes, I felt I was in the right place. Yeah, we introduced the flat twist fold and front suspension and all that kind of thing. As well as just having the day job, I like to inspire people to follow their dreams, because it's something that I have always done. I'm not very good at doing the career thing and making money. I like having fun. And I think it's a worthwhile thing to do, because frankly, all the money in the world cannot put a smile on your face like doing what you love doing, okay? If we all did that a bit more, the pharmaceutical industry would be a lot smaller than it is. So my son's gone to what we call secondary school, which is 11 to 16, and he has learnt that they have an electric car club at the school, and that this school compete on a local and national level with their electric cars. Now, their car, I went along with them to the first race, and their car came a resounding last. It was so last, it was a bit embarrassing. So I said to the teacher in charge, I said, well, I know a little bit about, making vehicles. How about we make a new one? Because it's 6 weeks to the next race, and I think we could make something a lot faster than the machine you've got. And he said, why not? So one evening a week, the school club met, and so I went along and I said to the lads and girls there, I said, well, I took one of our trikes and I said, this is what I make. I think we could use this as a basis for making an electric car, and I think it could be faster than what you've got. And they were keen. So we spent that evening doing some quick drawings of what, because it had to be a four-wheeler, what the electric car based on our trike bits that we were manufacturing might look like. And we came up with this design. I turned it into CAD, and over the next 6 weeks, we put it together and we wrapped it in Corex so it'd look reasonably aero. I don't know if it was very aero, but it looked reasonably aero. We took it along to the local race, which would have been about 20 odd schools or so from our local area, and it was a qualifier for the national final, and we won. We just plain won. We were having a ball. So we thought, okay. So we turns up at the national final, and 20 minutes into the race, the drivetrain exploded, and that was the end of that. It was meant to be a 4-hour race, and we got 20 minutes. I was utterly gutted. I was crying harder than the rest of them, but we had got to the national final. In 6 weeks, we'd gone from couldn't even so last locally, it was ridiculous. We were there at the national final. So that was good, and we said, right, we're going to do better than that. 2012 comes along, Tim says, Dad, I need a bigger fairing, and the World Championships is coming up in the UK. I want to be there, and I want to be fully faired. And I thought, oh, here we go again. His mother's going to kill me. This time we were given the lounge because it's already by the big double doors, so we knew we could get it out this time. And we took the lightweight monster, the 22-pound machine that you already saw, and we built a nice simple full fairing for it, and put Tim in it, and he became the junior world champion, and made most of the adults that he lapped multiple times very, very sick. So there he is, smiling like a Cheshire cat, thinking he's done a really good thing. And I have to admit, I was a pretty proud dad at that point. Going back to the school car thing, we said, right, we need a new car with a stronger drivetrain. So myself with the kids, we designed a carbon fibre chassis for the car, and Tim helped me build it in our workshops. We put a funky looking fairing on it, and we made it small this time, really, really tiny, because we had seen other cars at the national final that were very fast, and locally there was nothing that could touch us. We went around to other area finals once we'd already qualified for the national finals, but we wanted more experience, so we travelled around the country a bit, and yeah, we were fast. We knew we were fast. This car would cruise at 30 miles an hour, doing the gasoline equivalent of about 2,000 miles per gallon, built by 11 to 16-year-old kids, and it would cruise at 30 with a top speed of about 45 miles an hour. Now, most of our drivers were the 11 and 12-year-olds, they're the smallest and lightest. We used to drop an 11 or 12-year-old into a car that'll do 45 miles an hour, that on full power will drift through a corner. And they get in very cocky, and they get out as white as a sheet. But yeah, we had a lot of fun, and it turns out the girls are far better drivers than the boys. The boys have got way too much stuff going on inside. The girls are just clinical and just deliver. So yeah, we had a lot of fun there. We went to a race at Silverstone, one of our most famous racetracks, which turned into more of a regatta than it was a car race, really. The water was so deep, we got so wet that day, but smiles on faces, that's what it's about, and inspiring people to follow their dreams. So, talking about following dreams, Peter had retired and was doing various bits and bobs. He travelled to America to be reunited with his Lotus 11, which now races over here in classic car races, and he got to drive it again, so he was a very happy bunny. He also found an old Lotus that he'd worked on with Colin Chapman, that he'd kept an eye on for about 40 years. that was just rusting away in a shed. He eventually managed to buy it, restored it. This is actually the 7th car that Colin Chapman designed, and ordinarily would have been the Lotus 7, but Colin was reserving that name for a better thing, for a special project he had in mind. So this became known as the Claremont Special, and is the only one of its type. Peter got hold of it, restored it to its original glory, and he also went and found his old motor glider, which by that point was in Switzerland. He brought it back to the UK, restored that, and flew it again. And then sadly, in 2012, he died. But a happy guy, having put a lot of smiles on a lot of people's faces and had an awful lot of fun following his own dreams. 2013 comes round. Tim says, "Dad, I've outgrown the fairing." Yes, I guess you probably have, boy. So we built him yet another machine, and off we goes to South Germany with a team of guys, and Tim has an absolute ball again. Again, the fastest junior in arguably the world, but there weren't any from North America, so certainly in Europe, fastest junior we had. It started to rain during that race, and we learnt an important lesson, which I thought I'd learnt it, but it turns out I didn't. But Tim did most of the hour race looking through a slot which was 1/4 of an inch high and about 3 inches wide. So that was what he could see, was through a slot this high, and it's through the streets in the centre of the city of Leer. So miss a corner and you go straight in through a shop front. So it was quite exciting. The car that never was. That was going to be the next electric car, but Tim left school and I got onto other things. I got into our junior school, so that's now sort of 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds also have an electric car race which happens locally and nationally, and they get given the chassis which they have to build, and then the idea is they build the bodywork, design and build the bodywork. Now, I did some work with them. I helped them build their chassis, and then said, right, you do me some drawings, and I will help you build the bodywork. So they did me some drawings, and when you're getting 6 and 7-year-olds to design the bodywork for a car, it all gets a bit fanciful. But what I decided to do, I got a whole class of kids to design the cars, and then I said, what I'm going to do is take all the best bits from all of your drawings and produce the bodywork. And so I did, and I looked at their drawings and I thought, right, well, there's enough features in this for me to basically do whatever I like. So I did. And I got the bits cut out, and we went along to school and we glued it all together, and when they finished, they all agreed that was exactly what they had drawn. So we turned up there and had a lot of fun, and it's all good. We also work with universities in the UK when they tend to go in for the Shell mileage marathon. That also has an electric class now as well, so it's not just gasoline, but there's gasoline classes and electric classes. And I try and get there it's different. Rather than, you're not trying to sort of talk them up. With university students, you're actually trying to talk them down and trying to get them to put their feet on the ground and understand that they've got to build this thing and they've only got 3 months, because otherwise their ideas get carried away with them. So it's interesting working with guys, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Now, I'm not the only person who likes building fairings for trikes, because there are at least 4 manufacturers in the world that have done so, built fairings for our trikes. And then Maria is Welsh. Now, that probably doesn't mean anything to you, but on the west side of England, there is a little country called Wales. And they've always been a little bit, they have their own mind, shall we say. And the English and the Welsh we don't always see eye to eye. They are fairly determined little so-and-sos. Celtish, they're Celts, basically, like the Cornish where I now live, and the Welsh and the Scots, they're all Celts, and they're just a stubborn lot. Anyway, Maria came to see us and said, look, I want to be the first woman to ride to the South Pole. And we thought, yeah, you're nuts. And then I thought, hang on a minute, I'm nuts too, so that doesn't really help. Okay, so you want to ride to the South Pole? She said, yes. She said, bicycles won't work on the South Pole. Lots of people have taken bicycles there, but the terrain is too difficult. You can take a bicycle to the South Pole and you can ride little bits of the way there, but you can't ride the whole way there. She said a tricycle would do it, because a tricycle will keep itself upright. When it's climbing ridiculous 25% grades, it will stay upright. When it's carrying 120 pounds of kit, it will stay upright. When you're riding into a 50-mile-an-hour headwind at minus 50 degrees C, and I've no idea what that is in Fahrenheit, you'll have to do your own calculation, but it's pretty cold. She said a tricycle will work, because when I exercise down there, I have to exercise at a level that is below sweating. If I sweat, the sweat will condense in my clothing, it will freeze, become ice, my clothing will basically become a block of ice and I will die. So I have to ride very slowly so I don't sweat. And on a tricycle, you could gear it right down so it would go very slowly, but I could climb these crazy, crazy mountains that I've got to ride up through. And this lady's done her homework. So I said, okay, I'll build the machine, you ride it. Just don't die while you're doing it, because that would give me a bad conscience. So this is a picture of her testing it out in Iceland, which was useful, but not that useful, because it's only minus 20 out there, and it's not nearly cold enough. Oh, wrong way, sorry. Anyway, she got herself together, she got her kit together, she got herself and the machine to the South Pole, and just over 2.5 weeks later, she had 2 world records. She became the first human being in history to ride every inch of the way from the edge of the continent all the way to the South Pole. And she holds the record for the fastest a human being has ever done that journey entirely under their own steam, beating skiers, beating walkers, beating everybody who's done it entirely under their own steam. If you're taking a kite, you don't count. If you've got dogs, you don't count. So it's just human effort. She was very fortunate with the weather. Very fortunate not to die, really. And this building in the background, well, the pole is quite literally the South Pole, and this building in the background is a little bit of America. That is your base, subtly placed, not trying to claim the South Pole as American, obviously, but we'll just have this bit just over to the left here. Enough said. And now, well, we got deluged with people saying, build me one, build me one, build me one. And we thought, really? There's more than one person in the world wants one of these? This is crazy. So we made a production version. The deal was I would build 10, because there couldn't possibly be more than 10 people in the world wanted them. Before I'd built those 10, Neil, my business partner, came and see me and said, they're all sold, build another 10. So I said, okay, I'll build 20. That will definitely swamp the market. There will not be more than 20 people in the world want them. Before I'd finished building those 20, Neil came and said, they're all sold, you'll have to build another 10. So I said, 30? Really? Come on. And then he came in and said, they're all sold. I said, no, that is enough. I have retired from doing this. It's killing me. We're sending the drawings to Taiwan, and now we've sold hundreds of the darn things and put smiles on people's faces all over the world, riding in the most crazy of places. Prince Harry put the Invictus Games together for its Olympic Games style thing for veterans, wounded veterans. And it's a really good thing. The first Invictus Games was held in London, and Team GB, of course, took part. We were already selling our trikes to our version of Your Wounded Warriors, which is called Help for Heroes, and so all the British squad that were in the recumbent cycling events were riding ICE Trikes, and the finish line looked a little bit like that. They were given 3 gold medals, because in the way the British Army do, it's either we all finish or none of us do, so they came over the line together. And that Saturday afternoon, BBC One, which is our main TV channel, Saturday afternoon we had 40 minutes of live recumbent trike racing. Wow. I am sitting there going, I can't believe this. This is amazing. The Americans, I'm sorry to say, were completely trounced in that first games, but now almost the entire American team ride ICE Trikes. And this year, we got trounced. So there we are. We now are a team of about 25 people at ICE, and one of our young designers, Ewan, decided he wanted a bit of an adventure, so he entered a thing called the Mongol Rally. Now that starts in London and finishes the far side of Mongolia, just over the border in Russia. There are a number of control points along the way. You get no help whatsoever. It's all privateers. It's not a corporate thing. The deal is you have to buy a small, old family car, preferably no bigger than a 1-litre engine. Now, he got away with a 1.2-litre VW Polo, but it was proper old and fairly tired when he started. He drove it all the way with his mate, all the way from London, right across Europe and most of Asia as well, through Mongolia, spent an awful lot of time pretty close to the middle of nowhere, and then the far side of nowhere, and then the far side of the far side of nowhere. This is one of the roads that he found. He spent many days on no road at all, just driving cross-country for days on end. Mongolia has no maps, apparently, so they knew where they were on the face of the planet, but that was about it. So yeah, a lot of fun and an amazing trip. And if you do want a real adventure, come over to England, buy yourself an old little car and do the Mongol Rally. You will come back with some serious stories. And those of you who aren't that keen on camping, yeah, this might not be for you. I was fortunate enough to be given another Saab 96, so I took it to bits and rebuilt it. This time I'd got some money behind me, so I had a lot of fun. And now it's my car when I need a car. I mostly drive my trike, but I've got a Saab 96 again, so I'm a very happy bunny. This is me in my hometown with some of the guys, where there's a professional bike race once a year in my hometown. This is up in the Midlands, so not where I live now, but we were able to do some parade laps around the course before the professionals came in. So again, more chance to test the comfort of our trikes on our just awesome roads we have in England. Wrong way. Let's go that way. I'm now my son's 19, and we go touring together, and yeah, just it's great having him around. So there we are at Land's End, which is the very bottom tip of England. There isn't any England after this. The next thing is the Atlantic Ocean and then America. So we toured down there for a weekend and back. And lunchtime rides down to the beach, very popular in the summer. It's warm there and dry. It's lovely. You should come. Last year, I was reunited with one of that first batch of 9 trikes that Neil and I built back in 1999, and this trike is still immaculate. It looks like it was made yesterday. Oh, that's my battery dying. I'm going to have to speed up now. This is a concept trike that we built last year that we showed at the Spezi show in Germany. Quite a funky looking piece of kit. I've no idea how long my battery's going to last, so I'm going to speed up. This is our coastline. This is where I live. Isn't it lovely? That's our 5 minutes on the beach. We get that 5 minutes of blue sky every now and again. So quick run down to the beach, because that's the time to be there. That's my wife looking for her next house. She'll be lucky. That's reality. But this is a bit of fun. You'll see off to the right there, the bottom of the valley. Literally about 30 seconds after we took that picture, we were in the bottom of the valley, having gone over that lip. Wasn't a good idea, but it was, boy, was it fun. When I think I'm getting a bit close to the edge and being a bit silly, perhaps a little bit, I don't know, just not really got my feet on the ground, I go and watch these guys doing vintage car racing. This is pre-1931. This is a Morgan 750cc, 2-cylinder, supercharged Morgan, 3-wheeler. and they race these things, and it's quite exciting. Neil and I had the privilege of driving from San Diego to New England, visiting our dealers on the way in this rather sporty little Ford. You live in an amazing country. Oh, my battery's gonna die. That'll be the end of the talk, because it's nothing without the pictures. You do live in an amazing place. Go and see it. It really is a tremendous, tremendous land. Last year, I built another fairing another machine for me and Tim. So this is a trike, plywood chassis, and Corex fairings, and carbon fibre bits. And we raced in the World Championships, and we couldn't see where the heck we were going. Matt won the World Championships on his unfair trike. You can't see any of that. We raced locally in the British circuits. Matt came over here and raced in America, and is also, not just is he world champion, but he's also faster than anybody you got here too, riding his VTX. And this is one of the young men who I was lucky enough to inspire into doing the electric car racing. He's doing his own. He has now gone on, he made his own electric cars and raced them, and has now been signed up by Red Bull F1. So we've lost him, but he's gone to race with Red Bull F1 team. There's a few other bits and bobs that I can't remember, but you've all been extremely patient and listened to me whittering on. I hope you've had fun. Thank you very much. Wow. If you have any questions about the other crazy things I get up to, feel free to come and speak to me later.
Chris, whatever happened to that Tim kid of yours anyway? What did he do?
Tim's got his mother's brains, and Tim is now reading mathematics and philosophy at Oxford University. And I am one seriously proud dad. And my daughter Esther is 17, growing up to be a very independent young woman, as they should, very much taking after her mother. And yeah, I'm a very blessed guy. I don't have a job. I play with trikes all day, every day, and it doesn't get any better than that. So, thank you very much.